Hello everyone, and welcome back to In My Kitchen with Yvonne, the podcast where we delve into inspiring stories from visionaries, entrepreneurs, and educators. I'm your host, Yvonne, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for today's episode, which is packed with valuable insights and empowering conversations. Today we have our incredible guest, Lynn Swaine. She's a dynamic consultant and a powerhouse based in South Africa. She's here to share her remarkable journey and expertise in leadership, team dynamics, and inclusive workspaces. Welcome, Lynn. Tell us a little bit about you, Lynn. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thanks, Yvonne, for that great introduction. And it's wonderful to be here. I'm so pleased you invited me. And hello to your listeners and viewers as well. Yes, a little bit about myself. Based in Cape Town, the best city in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And I know it's tough out there for some of you in the cold. From my perspective, I think, here I am, as someone who's trying to really find shortcuts, find easier ways through life and through work for all of us. So whatever it is I ever do learn, I tend to push myself quite a lot. I am kind of driven and passionate about sharing it because life doesn't have to be this difficult. And that's really where my essence lies. In terms of what I do for a living and how I do that, Symbiotic Leadership Institute is our organization. I founded it, and it really was originally founded to be a conduit for research that I was doing on the neuroscience of leadership, which I would say, kind of stumbled upon in my late 40s, and everything came together. All that leadership struggle that I'd seen in organizations, because at that stage I'd already been consulting for probably about 17 odd years, and been in the learning and development frame and enjoying it, but knowing that there was a missing link. And having found that has given life to my ability to coach, to enhance other coaches, to change a culture within organizations, to be less toxic and more trusting, and really creating a culture of resilience through that. So that's the focus. I'm a mother of 2 daughters and a stepdaughter, all in their 20s. So we are now able to fully just focus on sharing and completing our purpose.
Oh my God, Lynn, thank you so much for that overall background about yourself. And you know what? I'm going to be asking you the secrets to looking as youthful as you do with 20 years as we go further in the podcast.
Beauty effect. Beauty effect
And
on
I'll also be
streaming
asking you a lot of questions about Cape Town as well, because we were discussing that just before the episode. But for now, I would really like, and our listeners as well would really like to know a little bit about your background. So you've got an extensive background in corporate training and leadership skills, and now you're revolutionizing the landscape with Symbiotic. Tell us in a little bit more detail. I know you started to get into it there, but could you maybe start by telling our listeners a little bit about your journey into consultancy, and then what led you to your TEDx talk on trust revolution?
Well, yes. So just as TEDx was a major stretch for me, and let me tell you, it's going to be easier for you as a result of what I'll share, because so much of it is in our heads. But just as I took that step, so I too, as a young person, having had to take on a lot of responsibility as a child, I emerged thinking, I'm going to step out, I'm going to break some boundaries, and I'm not prepared to stay in this limiting space. And to together with that were those self-limiting thoughts. But I decided to take what I could where I was. So there was no money for university in those days for me. What I was able to do was to do a 4-year diploma, for example, in microbiology, because I had an instinct and a love for science. And so that's what I did. I took that as the first step toward being in business, toward being able to enhance life, mine and others. And there I was one day in the laboratory analyzing feces and the next day deciding to apply for a management role. And I was only 21 at this point, but I just thought, just try, Lynn. And I landed up at Coca-Cola, leading a laboratory. So this incredible management stroke leadership career began. And out of that came great opportunities. And I then eventually moved into the pharmaceutical environment, and finally into regional and sales management at a relatively young age, and as a woman, which was in those days not that normal. And so during that time, I was able to gain a sense of how leadership was done, and where there were huge holes, and how easily a toxic culture can arise when it's not a top-down approach to creating a culture that supports wellness in your people. And it was out of that then that I decided to start my own business. I first bought a franchise, and that then developed into a learning and development organization, which did really, really well. And we tried always to challenge what was happening. And in the first organization, we developed a culture of intrapreneurship. So here we are, right, with that entrepreneurial sense of autonomy and excitement of being part of something while being employed. And so that was our first real win. And we took that out to sales teams, service teams, leadership teams, etc. We were nominated for the Age of Innovation award. And so that was really, really great. I then developed breast cancer, and that diagnosis brought me to crossroads and deciding to study coaching. So for 3 years, I practiced coaching, executive coaching, etc. Took and streamlined all of my experience and the then studies that I'd done. And out of that, I got to hear about this neuroscience of leadership. It was a Masters of Science program at one of your universities, Middlesex, really ahead of its time. And it really has been the biggest pleasure to be able to take this brain-based lens out to organizations and now help them build a culture of resilience and trust and ultimately wellness. And that's that has been the consulting journey. Generally about building a culture, and then the how is through empowering everyone from top to bottom.
It sounds to me like a lot of it was very much instinct driven. So, you seem to really understand yourself from what I'm hearing, and you see the path, and then fearlessly, almost like, so brave and fearless, go for it. So it's so beautiful hearing how your journey has been, and the kind of ups and the downs that you've faced as a woman, and then with the terminal illness as well, and just keep blazing through it. What would you say? So, because you were running a training company before, and now you're running Symbiotic, and through all these challenges, how has your approach evolved over the years?
Right, so I just love your insight initially when you said, Lynn, you seem to have an instinct for this, and that it's born probably, and and encouraged out of having had times that were difficult. And this is so true. Our self-awareness does develop if we are positively inclined and do not allow ourselves to fall into dysfunctional coping mechanisms, right? We are able to learn so much, and it is exactly that. It's when we've had to pick ourselves up and struggle, we learn ways and means and are hungry and out there and seeking personal development opportunities to grow. And what I love about the resilience curves that I work with is that we kick off with event 1, which is it's really tough. We then fall a little, hopefully reconcile everything, and turn back up. And so we develop our positive trend. At first, it's all about us, but ultimately, we bounce back with less and less to lose. And then eventually, purpose-driven, are able to help. So I just loved what you had to say there. My approach is always influenced by, these days, always influenced by a brain-based lens. So before, we used to, with leaders, show them models and say, oh, this is the way that change happens. This is what you need to do, guys. Now we're able to say, this is how the brain works in the workplace. When we look at annual reviews, what activates within your team's brains? What happens when they hear those words, right? What do you think you could do better understanding that? And so they buy into the way forward. And it's very much a sort of rip, feed, digestible, chunk, simplified research that is still robust and has integrity, but that leaves leaders wanting to do better and seeing that doing better for others means they too become healthier.
I love that. Doing better for others, they become healthy as well. We were having a conversation this week. I usually join a group of, I would say a mastermind group where we discuss things. And we were talking about that. One of the things that came up actually was depression. And as I can imagine, if you're dealing with something like, breast cancer, or you're dealing with quite challenging things, which people at work generally are. When they come to work, they put on this hard, but inside things are happening. And like you say, the wheels turning and the thoughts are coming when different things are happening. And one of the things that I remember we had a conversation about was giving and contributing to others. So if somebody was feeling quite depressed, best way out of that is actually, and it's so counterintuitive, it's actually get out the house and go and find somebody who is in a worse place than you are, and and fit into them. And I remember, yes. So for example, you could go to a children's home, find some children who do not have parents, and just give them hugs and listen to them.
Yes, Yvonne, you're spot on for many reasons.
So it feeds into it, but it's in giving that we receive, that saying. So it's fantastic that we say that, to leaders, actually pour into your people. And then they're going to pour into you rather than expect the other way around, like push. So yeah, brilliant.
Yvonne, on that point, if you would allow me, just such a beautiful segue into something that I feel is important for us all to know. And it's little understood, it's little known. So so there we are, right? Feeling down, and obviously it might not be clinical depression that we're in, but let's just use a reasonable scenario of not feeling great. We don't even want to leave the house. We can't think straight. We're feeling overwhelmed, but we decide to get out and go to that children's home or retirement home down the road. And we just start speaking, and that empathy that we then experience raises a hormone within our systems that is not only known as the empathy hormone, but also the moral hormone, trust hormone. Yeah. It's also released during lovemaking and hugs. So there you are. You mentioned the hugging.
Yes.
Beautiful. So it raises oxytocin in both parties. So the child on the receiving end from you of that love and that hug experiences a spike in oxytocin, as do you. Now this enables us to, because it's kind of contagious. So in that empathetic state, there are two things that would happen. In a corporate world, you would be able to start building a little circle of trust around you and empathy and inclusion. In that depressed or slightly low state, let's imagine you're in, it lifts you and enhances your thinking, because this oxytocin molecule also allows or modulates the release of the focus and passion hormone called dopamine. And we all want dopamine. Yes. And so suddenly you're feeling a whole lot better and actually quite a bit more confident and
energetic.
Absolutely. Maybe you'll go to that coffee shop now as opposed to just going home to your bed. Call a friend, and so on. And so that cycle continues. So, and it's a hormone that heals us, heals our frazzled nerves. So that's the beauty of empathy and giving.
Oh, beautiful. That makes so much sense. Is dopamine the one that's normally released when people are exercising as well, or moving quite quickly? Is that the same hormone?
Part of the cascade. And dopamine it's very similar to cocaine in structure, but it's legal. That makes you feel incredibly good.
So you can take a legal cocaine.
Legal. You can manufacture it yourself.
I've never done drugs, so I don't know how it
I can imagine.
But I imagine if it feels the way, this week I've upped my exercise regime. Like when you exercise regularly, you and we're going to go into that because I really want to discuss that your youthful secrets. We're going to be extracting everything out of you, Lynn.
Not much on that side.
We're getting all your brain and your neuroscience thinking now, and then after that we're going to go into your secrets of youth, because we have to find everything today for our listeners. So my exercise, I noticed I had come to a plateau. For some reason, we're not going to say age here when we're not discussing age. We all know we're all 16 with a few years of experience.
There you go. I like you.
As a woman, as we get older, I think it happens with men as well, because I think they get dad bods, don't they? There's certain areas where we start accumulating weight, and one of those is our stomach, our mid-region. And try as you might, I go to the gym almost every single day. I just could not shift. So I was like, okay, up we go. We're getting a personal trainer.
And
that was the thought.
You're looking good.
That was the thought. So I put an ad in Bar. So in the UK, there's this, it's like a Yellow Pages kind of thing online. And lo and behold, somebody called me. They came round to the house and they came with this huge equipment thing, told me to turn off all the lights, come downstairs with only sports bra and tights. I was like, well, hold on a minute, this is not personal. I am going somewhere with this.
Oh, Yvonne.
Anyway, so it turned out that they had what they call a body composition monitor.
Okay.
And it needs the darkness in which to read everything that's going on in the
Okay.
world.
Quite relieved. It's an adult show, right?
Now the thing though, I mean, I'm going a little bit out of what we're talking about. You forgot to tell me to tie my hair, and I usually have my hair this way. So when we did the whole thing, I looked like alien because my whole head and neck looked this big because it doesn't distinguish. It just throws the thing.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, no, it's okay. So we climbed on this thing, and it then makes you turn round, and then it gives you your body composition. And from that, he said that so your body composition is okay. What you need to do more is strengthening exercises. So as because I was told to do strengthening exercise, that's all I needed. I didn't go ahead with physical training after that because I exercise anyway. But this week I've been doing a lot of strengthening exercises, so I've been having a lot more dopamine.
That's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, whenever we challenge ourselves, and it sounds like you really have been, it's not easy Zumba anymore.
No, it's not just Zumba now. There's body fat. And it hurts. But there has been dopamine, and you're 100% right, Lynn. I do feel like I am on cocaine.
No, exercise is incredible. Yes, it really is such a stress reliever, and we tend to always put it, to the bottom of the list when busy, especially as an entrepreneur. So much going on. But yes, well done. I think that's incredible. I'm feeling really inspired.
Now it's coming. There's a long-winded way of asking. When you're doing your training, what are the ways that you encourage them to have this cocaine in the workplace?
No, we've got to be careful now.
This legal cocaine.
Yeah, so of course my knowledge is very limited to the leadership aspect. But when it comes to exercise, and I'm coaching someone around that, most of our issue and challenge lies in the getting up every day and making a habit of it. So I concentrate more on that. It is about having a goal that is not outrageous. So Yvonne, in your case, you obviously have a figure in mind, or if it's a weight loss, or if it's a centimeter loss, or whatever it is, you've got something in mind. And then to say, right, well, that's the end goal, but what can I reasonably expect with a little bit of a challenge in it over the next 3 months? And then what am I going to do about it? So bring the goal, the end point, the measure closer to you, because the brain likes that. It'll work toward that. And every time you think, and this is, of course, you probably have all of this down pat because you coach.
Right, I know about that, Lynn. I mean, my goal is to be 16 again, so.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have to really help you just normalize. But so every time you visualize that, Yvonne, you're visualizing your year from now, Yvonne, but thinking about your 3-month measure, your brain doesn't know any better and imagines that you are the Yvonne you picture, and then it gives you your dopamine release. It rewards you ahead of your goal every time you're very clear. And this is why it's sometimes important to kind of, maybe you have a picture of, and we're not allowing you to hope for 16, sorry. No. So you have a picture that is kind of reasonable, right? And but at least in your head, or maybe you're in your bikini again up our garden route here in South Africa.
There we go. Yes,
that would be great. Yeah.
At 16, no, 20.
So that's the issue now, and then creating a habit and stacking those habits, right? So that you're going to gym for a coffee and then a class. That's how I do it. I love my coffee.
Oh,
So
nice,
I
nice.
reward
Is the
myself
coffee the reward before the class, or?
it kind of is, yeah, for getting there. It's my first step. I got there. Now starts the next, and of course the reward after that will keep us coming back. So it's my long-winded way of answering your question.
No, I love it. I really love it. So you give yourself, so you have your big goal, right? So for example, at the minute, we're in the process of setting up our charity, and there's quite a few hurdles that you have to go through in order for the charity to be registered with the Charities Commission in the UK. Due diligence, they have to do all these things. So it might take us a year to register the charity. So what we could do in place as we're going through, because there will be hurdles that we have to climb, isn't it? But this is the end goal. So we have to set ourselves little steps that will get there. So once the charity is set up, it will be doing this. What could we do in the meantime that will help us feel good about this to get there? And I like your analogy of, I'm going to the gym, but I love a coffee. So I'm going to go and have my coffee, and then I go to the gym. You know what, Lynn? I'm going to steal that, because I'm always late for my gym class.
There you go. Absolutely. Make it a latte. Vanilla latte. With sweetener.
I'm trying to cut off dairy. I have I once met an investor, and they were having a turmeric latte. I might try turmeric. I don't know. I don't know.
Good. Yeah, it's good. Good for menopause, but I doubt that you're there.
Well, let's not talk about that. The way I'm sweating at the gym at the minute, anything is possible. So after the gym class, you then reward yourself. So you could, for example, I could reward myself with fish and chips.
Well, Yvonne, the reward that you get from going to gym, from a brain perspective, is so good. Don't you feel that you've hit that? Then it becomes more.
It's the feeling of it, the feeling after you've achieved the miniature goal.
That's right. You feel.
So it's basking in that feeling, enjoying that feeling, maybe even having a walk home.
Yeah, wow. Make it addictive.
I love that. I really love that. So, speaking about the mind and speaking about the brain, I really would like to get into your TEDx talk. But before we get there, I want to ask you a question. So a lot of the work that we do, we deal with the mind and we deal with emotions. Because we talk about emotions actually being the fuel for everything that we do in life. And I've always been curious about this mind-brain connection. What would you say? What is the mind? And how is it different from the brain? What's your opinion?
So there are so many different thoughts on it. What we believe, for the purposes of the workplace, for example, is that the brain is an amazing organ, and it has learned to default into biases, default into negativity, because it first is needing to protect us, right? So our brain might just as well still be living in caves as we once did, and at the rustle of a bush go into that fight and flight.
Everything's killing us, isn't it? Because we didn't have what do you call them? These bells that show people their face and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So our brain still carries all of that. That's there. And in the workplace, we are triggered now by a whisper in the corridors that because we aren't wearing our specs, we think is all about us. And that sets us off into this fight and flight state. So what we like to share is our mind, our will, our intentions are way beyond that. We're wanting more. We're wanting to be able to stay in an engaged state where we can think, where we can play, we can, be rational, come up with innovative ideas. For that, we need to be in our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain. And I believe that if we decide to take charge of our brain and its typical defaults, and our self-awareness is such that we're hungry, in fact, for a solution, we're able to learn emotional regulation techniques, simple ones, that can help us to the extent that even biases, prejudices that we've carried in the past, which became default because of the way we grew up, even those we're able to change. So it'll always be a non-conscious reaction, possibly in the first 2/5 of a second. But because you've learned a technique, it's like, no, is this true 100% of the time? Or there I go again. No, this person is my family. This is so that's the mind and the brain. As far as I believe, we need to be aware in the workplace. Take charge of that. You steer. You decide what you're going to be afraid of. You decide how you're going to reframe something that has threatened you, like someone laughing at you, for example.
Or the assumption that someone's laughing at you because of that reptilian brain. We're still in that cave, aren't we? So we're thinking, oh my God. And do you think like there's certain aspects that normally drive some people to be a little bit more sensitive? Because there's some people in the workplace that the slightest thing sets them off. And some people, they just seem to be able to ride whatever wave is coming.
Yes. So we're all actually set off incredibly easily. And yes, there could be predisposing factors to some people who are more sensitive than others, which means they probably have to work really hard at adopting techniques, practicing them, in terms of rising above some assumptions they might have made, perceptions they might have, in such a way that they in future can be included. Because that's often what we find, is that when someone assumes that they are excluded, they start withdrawing and it becomes them and me. Whereas in actual fact, they do have an opportunity to, yes, courageously decide that from their perspective, they're going to breed, say, trust, that at least this group would want to know a little more about me, or would want to, we all have the same goal in mind, that we have great teamwork, or we're all working toward organizational goals, etc. So yes, so this default into feeling sensitive, the reason why I said it happens far more easily than we think is, we in fact can see it in one of the experiments. This is by Eisenberger, top UCLA researcher, is a neuroscientist. What she did was she had people put into brain scanning machines, but the kind that you could stimulate a particular emotion and see at real time. So the neuroscientists were busy having a look at what and how people's brains were activated. And they had all of these participants watching quietly in their fMRI machines a little video. And in this video, there were 3 cartoon characters, and they were told which one they were. But of course, you're just lying there quietly very quietly looking up, and there's a ball being passed from one character to the next. So from one to supposedly your character, and so on. And these were adults
Yeah.
When they took them out of their machines, they were in a state. The neuroscientists had seen the activation of the fear circuitry within the majority of these adults. Fear circuitry. They came out saying things like, okay, so who were those other two? Irrational. Saying, no, it was just a video, it's a setup. All of you are seeing the video. No. And in fact, I don't know whether it was her experiment or later, that they in fact needed to have debriefing for these adults.
Wow.
So they weren't participating in the game. They were watching characters. And yet, this is how they felt. And they felt excluded, they felt insulted, because what happened was that the ball came to them less and less and less, and then not at all before they were drawn out of them.
Wow.
And that was the trigger. So from playing happily and seeing that prefrontal cortex, thinking brain, happy, down to the last few minutes, and seeing this change. So out of that, when one's in that state, one is irrational, one starts generalizing. It's like, who are those people? It's them and me. And then they're the foe. They're not my friends, they're a foe. I'll withdraw. I won't take risks. I won't take a risk trusting them. You really struggle to work in that state. But even seeing someone's expression, you look up at your boss and he or she looks absolutely, angry. Now, they might just have climbed out of their car from having a domestic argument or something and walked straight into the workplace immediately.
Yeah, like nothing at all to do with you. Yeah.
What does he know that I've done? And of course that can become extremely contagious in an open plan environment, and spiral down to total lack of productivity. So that link between our subtle triggers, and the triggers are in terms of our relative importance to other people. It comes in the form of feeling alienated, uncertain, information not shared with us, shared with others.
What's that? You know what? That is so eye-opening, isn't it? As in, we link our identity to something, even something that has nothing to do with us, but because somebody has said, this is you, this is your identity, you're this cartoon, we latch onto that identity, and then we then play the part of that, right? So the ball, we're afraid of being left out of this social situation. We're playing together, we're included, and then now we're not being included as much, and then it's completely withdrawn from us. And I suppose if somebody is coming from a situation where they're dealing with something like this that has happened to them, their inner child would really be triggered by that, wouldn't they? If they haven't dealt with this situation, or it is a situation that reminds us of a time in our life where we were excluded, we were bullied, whatever happened to us as a child, this would really trigger that identity within us. And especially because I hope they did some, what do you call it when somebody has gone through some trauma to deal with that afterwards? Debrief. I hope they had some debrief after this experiment. Can you imagine a few adults dealing with a lot of trouble afterwards? But it explains a lot, doesn't it? Like you say, a boss could be coming in to work, and a boss is actually an identity, it's a representation. That person is just a human being.
Right.
And if we have this horizontal relationship, it's not going to be as bad. But if we've been brought up in vertical relationships, the boss means so much to us, don't they? And who they signify, so they could signify a father, they could signify a mother, grandmother, whatever we've grown up with, and we have a vertical relationship with them, and then they come and they tell us off, right. So it takes us right back to when we were that little child, being told off by, in this vertical relationship. Really interesting stuff here. I'd love to get into this more, but
Yes.
I want to know why you chose the topic, a mind shift to create a trust revolution, as your TEDx talk. Tell us a little bit about what motivated, what inspired your talk. I'm really curious.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I felt as though I had been privileged enough to, in life, have experienced perhaps not having trust easily, not being deemed trustworthy because of where I had been placed as a child in a children's home, right? So it was, and that does come into the talk. Sort of overnight, your life changes. At the age of 9, especially those vertical figures, forever.
Mm.
But out of that came a sense of, right, well, this is way before I knew about neuroscience, and I think many people listening have had to do the same sort of thing. It's like, okay, it's not like I have everyone around me helping me up. I better do this for myself. And I set my sights on a goal, and along the way, I had rejections, further rejection. In other words, from a high school that I really wanted to go to. No, they rejected me because they saw that I was in a children's home. They didn't want to compromise anything within the school. And as a result, I had to get back up again. I was only 12 at that point. But, again, write a letter. And I'd trust that principal would read, would see the plea, would see my now new marks, and make a decision like that. So all of that, having to fight to be considered trustworthy, and the internal work it took to trust others again, led me to a real interest in the workplace, in how to develop and breed trust, but accelerate it. I mean, we don't have forever, and we do possibly have those figures who we need to defer to, or who control our salaries. Our brains perceive them as a conduit to either life or death. That's the brain.
The fight or flight that you talked about earlier.
Exactly. And we can't afford to consistently be subjected to that. So when I looked at the neuroscience of leadership and sales and service and everything that we do in the workplace, it requires us to see how we more effectively can create an environment of trust, whether it's with our clients, whether it's with our colleagues, and where teamwork is incredibly important, whether we're looking at ways of creating an upward mobility for ourselves. It's a skill that everyone needs. And I then, as a result of the studies, was able to pull together a way in which we can intentionally go and build trust. And I thought that I'd then share that idea. Obviously building and drawing from researchers who have done all of the first-hand, robust research, but draw for the sake of organizations. And this is how we train people within the organizations. There are models and tools that are built and backed by neuroscience. I thought, right, it's time to share this one idea with whoever needs it. And what better opportunity than TED Talk? Yeah. So that is what I first felt. I then sat at a lunch last November with an amazing woman, Carol Constant. And I think, Yvonne, you're familiar with Carol Constant as well.
Yes, she is part of my mastermind group. So we
Wonderful.
usually, she's an amazing woman. She's done her own TED Talk as well, hasn't she?
That's right.
And her story is brilliant.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So she came out from, I think it was Czechoslovakia at the time, and sat down at our table at a beautiful wine farm here in Cape Town for our little Christmas party. And she said, "So, what are your goals?" to everyone around the table for next year? of course, by surprise, it was only November, but of course, most of us are coaches, so we should really have one at hand, right? And we said, well, what was yours? And she said, it was to do a TED talk. And I said, I did it. I said, how did you do it? Wow, the courage, she did it. And against many odds, and had something to share. And she said, so what are yours? And I said, you know what? I've always wanted to do it. I'm going to do it this next year. And yes, fortunately, I just kept trying to find out how it all worked. Carol was amazing. She had streamlined that process, how to get to be accepted on stage. And then I had her and Beatrice, part of TEDx Veneta Women in Namibia, being the most brilliant coaches, just nurturing, helping, reading, editing, scripts. It's a far more nurturing process than we think, and that's also something I want to encourage everyone here to consider. A lot of us have some really great ideas born out of our own experience, as well as what we've been able to pick up. So that's what it is for me. It's having had an interesting background. That is a privilege. Having had the opportunity of studying through Middlesex University, major privilege. Something that is cutting edge. I have got to offer this back to those who need it.
Oh, brilliant. And I love the fact that you embody it as well, saying, coming from the experience that you have come through, so you have learned how to be resilient, and I would imagine you've learned how to do it on your own, a lot of it, and from the sounds of it, you've had some really good mentors as well, from your school life, as well as mentors and coaches like Caroline guiding you to this, to do the TED talk. And now, where can people find your TED talk if they would like to listen to it? We know what it is, but just remind us what the heading of the TED talk is and where people can go to find your TED talk.
Right, wonderful. Yes, so you are able to go straight into YouTube or directly to the TED platform. But YouTube, it will say Lynn Swaine, that is Lynn. Surname is Swain. And you could say TEDx. In fact, I think what you need to say is, if you really are stuck, it will probably come up with a mind shift. This is the title. A mind shift to create a trust revolution. A trust mind shift to create a trust revolution.
I love it.
Yes. And it's TEDx Veneta Women. It was the local venue. So TEDx Veneta Women.
Fantastic. And that's
Good.
in
So
Namibia,
that's
right?
Yeah, that was in Namibia. I went off to Walvis Bay, and then it was just a brilliant experience, I must say. What a warm audience as well. That was also something that I did. In our nervousness, it's good to have a model. And in fact, if you listen to the talk, you'll be able to pick up on that model. That's really what I used before I stepped up onto that stage. I dampened down my own sense of threat and fear. I regulated that. I decided I could trust myself because I'd done this. It was all really in my head. I'd augmented this thing. And then, what could I trust the audience for? Little thing I could trust them for. Well, they're here they're also open, just like I am, to learning. Wonderful. So we had that in common. That took some empathy from my part. And my oxytocin then spiked, and I was able to think more clearly and remember words and play a little on that stage, as opposed to just doing it rote.
Brilliant. And then the dopamine of going through the speech.
Yes, exactly. and having done it, yes, that's a wonderful reward when you step off.
Do you have a coffee as well?
A little bit stronger than that.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. I love the way your whole life's journey really has been that stepping stone to everything that you're doing now. And it's so authentic. It really comes through. It really shines through. That everything that you're doing, you have had some challenges. You have gone through quite a bit of a learning journey on your own, and this is what you embody, and this is what you teach as well in the courses that you do. Now, I would like to ask you specifically, because you work within the workplace, you work with people going through challenges in the workplace. How about yourself? Could you share a significant challenge that you have faced in your career journey, and then tell us how you overcame it?
Well, it is actually around wellness, so I'll mention this. In the first larger training organization that I co-founded, I was so excited. You know how you are, and you're, Yvonne, I mean, with your particular organization, you're talking about you're only going to be, given the go-ahead fully, possibly in a year. And
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yes, it's crazy, but you must stay excited now. That's right, and one is as a founder, so you can see the future. And in my case, I had a wonderful co-founder as well, and we were passionate. We worked day and night. That's what we did, and we would take on massive projects and grow, and we were so proud, I suppose, of the fact that we could. But this then became a habit. It became habitual. I used to derive so much pleasure from that. I also derived great pleasure from my family and my two beautiful little girls at the time. But I didn't prioritize my health, going for checkups, mammograms, those kinds of things. And in my last year at the organization, I started feeling nauseous all the time. All the time. I would have migraines every day. But because I was so driven, I had clients waiting for me, consults that had taken 3 months to set up. I would drive through the visual aura, could hardly see what I was doing, but I would drive, I would get there, I would present with a migraine. It's almost impossible to do that, but I drove myself through that. And I had no time, I felt, to go and see a doctor. And eventually, when I did, the diagnosis was already in place. So I was probably in and on a slippery slope that year before. Fortunately, I did go after having withdrawn from that crazy life. It took me sitting with my executive coach for him to say, so this was during that terrible time that year when I truly had symptoms of what was to come. He said, so where do you want to be this year? Obviously talking about the business. And I said, actually, all I want is to feel the wet grass under my feet in the mornings. That was what I truly needed. And I said, but anyway, let's get back to business. And he said, no, let's go back to that green grass. And we then explored it. And my incredible, you have such loyalty. You've grown an organization. It's your baby. How could you possibly leave it? But I was in a state in which, if I didn't, it would have meant death. And so I decided to take time out. There came the jolly diagnosis. It gave me space to think about whether I truly was being the best mum to my two gorgeous girls, highly intelligent, but who had an au pair with them in the afternoons, not mum. And so I decided to take a couple of years, during which I did all sorts of other things, but it wasn't that same pressure. It was volunteer work. I would help a church build leaders and coaches so that we could grow, that sort of thing. And that was just enough to keep me feeling like I was doing good while I was getting well. It enabled my family to have what they needed. And it led me to my ultimate, I feel, purpose in life, which was this neuroscience of leadership, all through my taking a step back. So to answer your question, Yvonne, that was something that surely taught me an incredible lesson. And it is about balance, about taking time out, regaining perspective, and moving forward based on that.
I love that. And it just goes to show just what an incredible person you are, Lynn. Having to deal with all that. And just like we talked about right at the beginning, what you ended up doing was giving to others that actually helped you through yourself. You took time off and gave to your daughters. You took time off and went and worked with a church organization that needed you.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're a real life example of what you teach.
Thank you.
Don't just speak
Thank
it,
you.
you actually live it. Brilliant. Oh wow. So you then started Symbiotic. Tell us a little bit about what Symbiotic does. I know you do courses, they're quite impactful, and programs, and you look at the role in leadership development. And so what do you do? How do you measure success, and how do you know that those programs are effective?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for those accolades. I'm sitting here quietly saying thank you and just lapping it all up, right?
No,
Looks like I am.
when you're
totally
in the
know what you're
presence
saying.
of greatness, Lynn, when you're in the presence of, I'm in the presence of greatness here. I'm such a real
I'm
queen.
in
I'm so
I'm telling you.
privileged.
Yeah. You can always tell, right? So I look at you, I hear you, and I know too, this is visceral stuff. We are 100% living it. But thank you. Yes, so in organizations, Symbiotic Leadership Institute has training programs that support a bigger goal within that organization. So if they are wanting to create a culture of performance, let's say, right? Performance and revenue might be kind of closer to what
Very
they really
important,
want.
yes.
Yes.
Productivity, so that you can, and efficiency, those are normally
Yeah.
the biggest drivers anyway, so
Right.
that we have those dollars and pounds or runs going in.
Yep. So that's great, and that is the measurable end point. But what we do with leaders and with teams and so on, we create a sense of self-awareness through showing and sharing what happens in the brain when, as we spoke about today, we are triggered by the typical workplace issues. We look at the kinds of challenges that the leadership and their teams are experiencing, and we work toward them coming up with ideas as to how to overcome them once they've seen what we need to do in terms of regulating the thinking that is keeping everyone stuck. So there's a real sense, even if they start off not trusting each other, by the end of a second day, or if we chunk it, it'll be, say, the end of a month, having 4 hours a week every week, end up with this incredible cohesion. So we go from self-awareness to how do I regulate my emotions? Like 3 easy ways, right, that can help you cope with just about anything in life. How can I deal with this jolly prejudice now that I know that it's a normal default? That's my brain's shortcut. It doesn't like working too hard, so it jumps to its own conclusions, and I have just allowed it. So what can we do about it? We will have leaders saying, right, so we have a diverse team. How do we create family here? How? If we are all non-consciously somehow separating ourselves out from each other, what are we going to do to unite? Well, let's have a common vision. Let's truly connect. Let's get, in the minute you start seeing each other as human beings, all the same needs, the same triggers, that transparency leads to more and more and more closer connections. Before you know it, everyone is feeling happy, connected, trusted, trustworthy, rising to expectations, and so it's about that. It's about then fine. So how do we actually intentionally create this trust? What does it mean? what will it look like? And then we go into a sort of a change fitness scenario, because even having these initial goals is part of change fitness. So yes, we're looking to organization change, but how do we coach our people then to become resilient? How do we coach them, as opposed to annual reviews using the old key performance indicators, which frighten everyone? It just is full of judgment, suppose that you're perceived to be that way. How can we do it differently? And so every individual on the program undergoes an internal transformation. They are better as a result of having been through this process. Not only are they better at work, they're better at home in their relationships. And they love the fact that it's hard science, as opposed to this is what you should do. It's like, now you see this, what does it say to you? What are your insights, and what do you want to do about it? So that is, we have resilience programs, trust programs. We have mainly leadership programs. How do you create a culture of performance and wellness? Sales teams, how are you unlocking in your clients what you need to through first taking charge of your own brain, which is your way of success before you've even walked in, gone into your Zoom screen. You have put barriers in place that are precluding a successful outcome. So there's just, it's generally the same process that we adopt, but with measurable outcomes that are appropriate to what it is that they do. From a sales perspective, they might say, right, one of them might just, because they're all their own goals, but under a greater umbrella, they might say, I have 3 clients who are so intimidating, I've shied away from going to see them. Well, within the next 6 weeks, post this training program, I want to go and see these individuals using my newfound skills and assess the outcome. And invariably, they have a basic revenue based outcome. So there's that. Leaders would look at presenteeism. They'd have a measurable goal. So be measured.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it all comes from a self-awareness perspective, understanding yourself, understanding what triggers you, understanding. And I love that as well for the leadership, because it gives them something tangible, being transparent. It's quite counterintuitive sometimes, isn't it? The heads of business, when you're thinking, if I share or if I'm too transparent, am I going to be sharing too much with my people? But like you're saying, it actually does the opposite. It builds trust. It helps them have a common shared vision, something they can all gravitate behind, brings everybody together. And then I like the fact that you then go into the individual parts of the business. So that is brilliant. Thank you so much, Lynn. What I'd like to do in this last part of the session, though, sorry. Tata wants to join the conversation. Hi, everybody. So we want to. Somebody was.
He wants your attention. I think. Right.
So he's very protective over that door. Like as soon as he hears the gate, it's his trigger. Like we're talking about.
Exactly. He's got a job. Everyone's got a job.
His trigger. But at least he deals with it quite quickly. He's quiet now. So I would like us to go into this quick fire bit where I want us to uncover your secrets of youth. We did talk about this. So by the time I've rinsed everything out.
In addition, you mean to having a filter on my screen, right?
You don't have a filter? No way. I've seen you without no filter. I know you're hiding the truth here, but we're going to get it out of you later. Oh. Okay, so let's go into a playful part of the podcast. I enjoy it. Most guests really enjoy this, and we want to find out a little bit about who Lynn Swaine is, so the personal side of you. And I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. No thinking. Got to say the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, right.
Don't worry, we'll keep it quite kosher. Last question. What's your favorite guilty pleasure food? No
Mm,
thinking.
lasagna, comfort food.
Comfort, comfort food, lasagna, fantastic. So all that cheese and how do you
Mm.
look like that if you're eating lasagna? Or is it like
Yeah,
you say
the rest of the week, it's not that great. Deprivation.
okay. Oh, brilliant. And then what's your one secret tip for having high energy on a consistent basis?
I believe that every morning, waking up and saying, right, what do I need? And I know it's not necessarily the right culture for everybody, but I'm driven by exciting goals. So I tend to set goals that are slightly beyond even my expectation, like slightly, and then not tell everyone about it, strangely, not tell everyone about it. You don't want micromanagement when you're in the middle of, really fighting toward this. So yeah, I wake up in the morning and I basically remember the ultimate goal, and that moves me. I, of course, up my dopamine with my coffee. That it gets me beyond that typical early morning stage, especially at my age, because it literally does move dopamine toward a sweet spot. Just so that your listeners know, if you have too many cups, you in fact are sliding down the other side of that curve into not being able to concentrate. So while it helps you, it's got to be in the sweet spot. But so it would be that, it would be some exercise, and then settling down in a novel environment. So if I'm not training on a particular day, I don't work from my home office. I go to a coffee shop where there's music and there are other people, because we have that kind of a culture here in South Africa. I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but
We definitely have music coffee shops.
and people take out their laptops, and
I
now
am
you're not
joking,
alone.
Lynn. It's not
Really?
as
Oh, don't you?
robust as Africa. I am from
Really?
Africa.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
it's very
Oh,
chill, it's very
yeah. Yes.
conservative.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so I would, and that moves your dopamine. So that's also, it's novelty, change, challenge. And so that's how I thrive. And probably like you, I still feel 16, 17 inside. And I believe that is probably the key. That's all I have to offer.
That's the secret. That's the secret of looking like a queen at 16 years with 20 years of experience, like Lynn.
No, that's the half of it. Only half of the figure.
Oh, we've had such a fantastic time. I could talk to you forever,
Same.
It's really been enjoyable. We've learned so much. I mean, you started us off with explaining the importance of our brain in the actions and the activities that we undertake, and understanding why sometimes we react the way we do because of that reptilia brain, the ancestors, the brain we've inherited over gazillions of generations. And it's knowing that our reactions, and anybody can be triggered, right? From the study that you've seen, we looked at, anybody can be triggered. It's just how we react to those triggers. So different people are able to cope in different ways because they have developed certain coping skills. And I suppose the key takeaway is most of us can learn these coping mechanisms and then take them into our various roles. And the importance of leadership, being aware of this. But most importantly, I think that is the one key takeaway, and the key insight is we each can be self-aware. And the more each and every person in the workplace is self-aware of their triggers, the relationships that we have, if we have vertical relationships rather than horizontal relationships, how we are going to be triggered more, and the steps that we can take to make sure that we take responsibility for how we are in the workplace in order to create a non-toxic environment in our own workplaces. So that we have I suppose, if I can say this, Lynn, if it's okay, so that we can have the utopia that we want in our workplace.
Always dream, yes.
Yes, so really, really important. So thank you so much, Lynn. Could you maybe tell us about where you want to be going in the future with Symbiota, with your, if you can share? I know you don't like to share your goals, but maybe one little goal for next year. The one that we are allowed to know.
Don't micromanage me.
Totally get where you're coming from with not sharing the dream as it's germinating, because sometimes people will crunch it up. People can be weeds to our dreams if we're not careful. We share our dreams. So I totally echo that, but maybe that little one that we're allowed to.
Absolutely, yeah. This is completely different. Yeah. So Symbiotic Leadership Institute is on the brink of expansion that needs to include the UK and the greater Europe. So I am so happy to be on your podcast with you, because you are really part of that incredible road, that journey. So yes, we're wanting to develop facilitators both in Europe as well as elsewhere across the world, and it's time to really spread the message. And I think that, interestingly, this TED Talk has led me to that sense of a need to do this, because we were right. People are desperate for that kind of information. People are struggling in lack of trust. They're struggling for lack of skills to develop trust. And trust is core to income. It's core to everything that we're looking for in any workplace or in any home. So our conduit to all of this comes in the form of these amazing programs, transformational programs that reach so many different goals. And it's important that we not keep it the best kept secret here. That is where I'm wanting to go. I'm also really wanting to take to further speaking platforms. So I also invite anyone to email me or find me on LinkedIn, Lynn Swaine, or lynn.symbiote@gmail.com. Send it to that email address, lynn.symbiote@gmail.com, to be part of the expansion. I really do look forward to that, and would love to be challenged with something new. Give me a new challenge to solve.
Fantastic. Give you new goals. Lovely. Thank you so much. We've been having an insightful, valuable conversation with Lynn Swaine over in the beautiful area of Cape Town, which Lynn has invited me to go to, and I would go there in a heartbeat, especially in winter.
Yes, absolutely.
It's lovely to make a new friend in Lynn, from our friend that we were talking about, Caroline, but also to understand the value of self-awareness, especially within the workplace, and for leaders to understand how our employees, our workplace colleagues can get triggered, and how we can support them in having that shared vision. So thank you so much, Lynn, for choosing to spend your valuable time with us. I know you're such a busy woman, really successful, and for you to choose our platform and to come and spend your valuable time in means a lot to us and our listeners. And I would really encourage our listeners to go back and listen to this episode, listen to what Lynn has shared with us, some really valuable insights that we can start putting into our life straight away.
Yvonne, can I please just thank you and to say it was a total, I want to say privilege, it's so overused, but really to be here with you. You create such rich conversation, and thank you. You truly are well-being champion, and out there for all of us, and just really allowing us all to learn from each other. And I've learned from you. Thank you very, very much, and thank you to your listeners and your viewers. It's been a very special time.
Thank you so much. And for now, really encourage our viewers to have a look back at this episode and follow us at In My Kitchen with Yvonne. And we look forward to hosting our future episodes. Our next episode, we're going to be having the lovely Georgia, another powerhouse woman, who will be coming to share her experience as a startup founder, some of the challenges she had, and some of the ways she has found to cope with them. And this, our well-being podcast. So for now, we just want to wish you a lovely day. And as you know, keep showing you some TLC today. Bye for now. Maybe.